from the Bo! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. We've got a lot to chat with him about with all these guys trying to sue and successfully suing for more eligibility in college basketball. We're going to chat with him about what teams might be willing to sign these guys and if these guys that get signed very late in the process might actually hurt their teams a little bit because you're going to have a bit of a lack of chemistry going on there. I know that his West Virginia Mountaineers are getting a fifth-year guy or two, so we'll be talking about that. And we're seeing a lot of reclassification in the SEC. We actually saw that happen on Sunday, and I will give my thoughts with Vanderbilt being able to get some reinforcements on Sunday. That was some big news for them, and we are going to be diving in with regards to Michigan as well, the fact that they lose LJ Kaysen over the week, so we've got a lot to talk about. Typically, we don't get this sort of news in college basketball in mid-July, but here we are, and I'm covering it all every single day on this podcast. So if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, LarsEM, the naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I do beg with you, I do plead with you, please do send in these Twitter/X questions. Help the offseason go by a little bit faster, and with regards to the offseason in college basketball as well, typically it's much, much slower than it is right now. We have been gifted with some great news, so that has been tremendous, and the conference previews, they are going to be continuing. I've been reaching out to our good friend Sam Fetterman. He is the master of taking a look at the Metro Conference. That is going to be the one that comes up next. We're going to be doing all of these mid-major conferences in alphabetical order, and then we go with the big boys. So we're going to get some MEAC action, the Missouri Valley. Those are going to be conferences. They're going to be covered within the next few weeks, so you can be on the lookout for that. And we're going to be doing those in the next few days because I did want to take a few days to just look at these court cases, which of these teams might actually be willing to sign some of these guys as well. And we are noticing a lot of reclassification as well. It's an unprecedented time because typically these rosters are all set in stone, and we might be getting a second wave here in the transfer portal. So I want to give a few days to be able to get caught up there, so that way if I'm doing a conference preview, it's not like, oh, there are 10 guys added to the rosters out there in the Metro Atlantic, the Missouri Valley, what have you. So that's a big reason why I've been slowing down a little bit more with these conference previews, but I have no fear. Those are going to be all gas up there. And how about if we do take a look at the big piece of news that we saw on Sunday in college basketball? Gabe Nesmith, he was a top 20 recruit. I believe he's of relation to Aaron Nesmith. I could be mistaken there, so don't quote me there, but I'm pretty sure that you've got the blood ties there because the other Nesmith also played over at Vanderbilt. He is a top 20 recruit for the class of 2027. He's now going to be playing for Vanderbilt this year, and he's a guy that is a very solid guard, and for Vanderbilt, they do lose much of that backcourt from a season ago. It was so critical that they were able to get Tyler Tanner back, who had put his name in for the NBA draft, but you do have to feel like there's going to be a little bit of a fall off here. Like, I don't know how Ace Glass is going to be as a number 2, number 3 scorer for this team. They bring in T.O. Barrett, who is good in terms of being able to slash to the rim over at Missouri. He's got familiarity with the SEC, but no doubt about it, not necessarily the same level of three-point shooter. And Nesmith, he's got a little bit of versatility in his game. He's got a bit of a three-point shot. That's going to be able to help them out. And they're also bringing in Anthony Brown as a freshman as well. He'll probably be playing some minutes right away. For Vanderbilt, they should be a little bit bulked up down low. Jalen Washington, by the way, he's one of those guys that did apply for extra eligibility with regards to those lawsuits as well. He was a part of Vanderbilt last year, so right now they've got Berkey Butunsel along with Bengo Dak, who are going to be your main big men down low, along Sebastian Williams-Adams. He's a little bit more of a 6'8" stretch player, in my opinion, in this system, but that's something to watch out for as well. So I do feel like Vanderbilt, they might be getting a reinforcement or two on the way there, but no doubt about it, this is helping out a bunch that I felt like they needed just a little bit more to be able to stay where they were last season, because Mark Byington was really able to have this team burst onto the scene. I love what I saw from them last year, and bringing back Tyler Tanner, the heart and soul of that team, that's big, but so many of those number 3, number 4 scorers, all of those ancillary guards guards, them being out for one of the teams that was one of the better ones in terms of their overall offense and their overall three-point shooting. They need to be able to just restock a little bit more there. And will Nesmith be a guy that instantly becomes a double-figure scorer? Probably not. And I feel that way about a lot of these guys that reclassify. When you reclassify, if you're able to give a team like starters minutes, and if you're able to be even just like a solid scoring option, I feel like that's just absolutely amazing. A lot of these guys that can't make that leap right away, I don't know if Nesmith is going to be able to do so or not, but even a guy that can be a spark plug off the bench, give you a 3 or 2 per game, I think that that is massive for this Vanderbilt team. So I love what they were able to do there, and I love the fact that on this podcast we're able to get on such great guests like our good friend Ryan McIntyre, who does amazing work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He joins me next radio on Just Go Seats with myself, Gabe Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always a pleasure to be joined by this man, as we've got Ryan McIntyre aboard. He does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast. I work with our good friend Kobe Dant on the college experience. They cover a little bit of everything. Right now, they're doing their previews for college football. I know that our good friend Kobe was over there at ACC Media Days for college football, so they're locked in there. They do a great job with college baseball, college basketball, you name it, they do it. For Ryan, he's a proud West Virginia alum. He also does the Ryan and Rush show that is dedicated to West Virginia athletics. Love getting him on here as well because he used to be on the coaching staffs of both West Virginia and South Carolina. So especially with this murky time of year, we can use his insights, and you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at Moneyline_Mac, spelled MAC. Always appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me. Let's talk some hoops.
Absolutely. And Ryan, typically when we're in like middle July, we're rehashing things, being like, oh, what team has this, that, and the other? Have you changed your opinion on some sort of team? And all of a sudden, since we had you on about 2 weeks ago, we've had an avalanche with a whole bunch of guys out there in the Midwest being able to get eligibility. We have 25 people suing for extra eligibility right now in California. How do you just take a look at this unprecedented time in college basketball where we might be getting another wave in the transfer portal here in late July and August?
Yeah, it's once again, nobody really knows the rules. We continue to create change as we go along. But yeah, I mean, it really depends on what state you're in, I guess, based off of what rules you're able to play by, allowed to play by. So interested to see how this thing shakes out. But hey, it wouldn't be college athletics without some gray area, right?
Yep, it wouldn't be college athletics as well without the NCAA being the Washington Generals of the court system as well, losing every single court case humanly possible. So, hey, congratulations to them for being able to perfect that. And how do we take a look at these guys that got newfound eligibility? Because some of the guys, they're already signed with the team. Like, we were both high on Cincinnati before, bringing in MJ Collins, who had 17.5 points per game. I have to imagine stock up there. Xavier, they got Borovichinen. He was a guy that was their top rebounder last year. Those are good ads. And then you've got a few other guys that are currently free agents looking for a new team.
It's kind of changes as we go. Teams are able now to add and subtract kind of like free agency. So if you're able to add an impact guy, it's kind of like adding a rim protector or three-point shooter or point guard late in free agency or kind of at the trade deadlines. But we continue to adapt as we go along, Greg.
Yep, we certainly do. And how do you take a look at those teams like a Cincinnati and Xavier, where these guys were already signed with them? They already know the system. I think that those are teams that are very much going to benefit from this. And we've talked about this team in previous off seasons. Kansas State, back when they had Jerome Tang, it always felt like they tried to sign someone at the last second. And it felt like they always had a great team on paper. And then it just went straight down the toilet bowl. They were big, giant disappointments. And I feel like it could be that way once again, where some of these teams feel like they might be getting a steal with a really talented player, but the chemistry just might not be there with signing him in July or August.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, we saw that with Jerome Tang. You add a couple pieces late, and maybe your locker room and chemistry isn't what it needs to be. So yeah, just because it looks good on paper, I think we still forget that culture, locker room, and stability still do matter.
Yep, it certainly does. As Ryan McIntyre does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly one team that is certainly going to be looking for someone, that'd be Gonzaga, because Mario Saint-Sapri, he heads on over to Spain about a week and a half or so ago. And I want to get your thoughts on all the rumors that we're hearing that Donovan Dent might be heading over there, because that honestly feels like a textbook perfect fit for Dent. Obviously not the same three-point shooter that Mario Saint-Sapri is, but a guy that absolutely dominated over at New Mexico, over at UCLA. It was a little bit of a different style, a much more slowed down style, and I feel like going to a school like Gonzaga, that's much more like what New Mexico is, and I feel like he could really thrive if that's where Gonzaga wants to go.
Yeah, I think he'd be a great fit. And we've seen few, whether he's had really good guard-oriented teams, he's had really good big-oriented teams. So if that's where he elects to go, I mean, we've just seen his teams be so flexible and to be able to adapt based off of their personnel. So Dent ends up being over there. I think he'd be a perfect fit in that Mark Few system.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I think that is really the one of intrigue, and just all these guys out there in the state of California, they're right now suing for extra eligibility. We've got a few guys from Stanford that were on that lawsuit. There were actually some big-time players that were on there as well. I think that's going to be a seismic wave for them. And the question that I have right now with all these lawsuits that are going on is, will these guys be able to get paid enough to make it worth their while? Because there's a lot of guys that they decide not to take like two-way contracts, things like that in the NBA in order to be able to pursue this. But at the same time, too, a lot of these teams have spent through their NIL funds. There are going to be a few teams looking at you, Michigan, who loses LJ Kaysen. Obviously, you mentioned Gonzaga, and most famous one, LSU. I think LSU might be signing the two of us at some point if they can find us eligibility, which they'll certainly be able to find it for me. But that said, I do think that it's a really interesting dynamic here because so many roster spots are already taken, and most of these teams have already spent their funds.
LSU continues to find loopholes for the system. Well, interested to see how many guys they end up getting eligible for this upcoming season. But hey, until we actually have clarity on what eligibility looks like, sign away, Will Wade.
Yep, with Will Wade, boy, that guy is not going to be afraid to shoot his shot, and he's not afraid to, not even just bend the rules, a level beyond bend the rules. So that is going to be fascinating to say the least. As Ryan McIntyre does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I mentioned the two big teams I felt like were giant beneficiaries of everything that we've seen over the last 2 weeks, Cincinnati and Xavier. I think right now that those two teams are looking like pretty solid NCAA tournament teams. But was there another team or two that you felt like really benefited from what we've seen over the last few weeks? Because there's been a lot of football going on. There's been a lot of change, and there's a lot of guys that now are on rosters that we weren't sure if they were going to be or not.
Yeah, I think my Mountaineers could be the beneficiaries of this ruling, potentially getting a fifth-year guy back from last year's team. So, like you said, there's just so many moving parts. It's hard to really nail down what looks good and what doesn't yet until we actually get a ruling. And I feel like this thing is going to go all the way up until we tip the ball off in November. But yeah, I would say the teams around the state of Ohio that continue to get favorable court rulings. Interested to see how this thing shakes out down the road.
Yep, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the California case as well, because that's right now the one that is involving Donovan Dent. He retires and then he unretires, and now he's going to be looking to get back into it, so that's interesting. And something else that's interesting that I've noticed over the last week or two, I don't think that West Virginia had any of these guys, but we're noticing a lot of reclassification, especially out there in the SEC. Marcus Spears Jr. was one of those guys. Davion Thompson over at Arkansas, he was a top 25 recruit. We saw the gentleman from Vanderbilt Vanderbilt on Sunday. He's another guy that's going to be reclassifying. What do you make out of these SEC teams that are just finding ways to be able to get these guys eligible? Because we have seen like almost all of these SEC teams, Gabe Nesmith is a man for Vanderbilt that I was thinking of before, that they're finding ways to be able to bring in talent without even utilizing the transfer portal or even going overseas at this point.
And I'm interested to see how this goes along going forward as well, just because you've seen Calipari use it to his benefit over the years. Some of the blue bloods, if they have a highly touted freshman, they reclassify to get them on campus. We've seen it with Duke. We've seen it with Kentucky. Can throw Kansas in there as well. So it's another layer, reclassifying. And I guess some teams are going against what everybody else is doing, where everybody wants to get old. And some teams are now going the youth route because they think they can get as much talent with the younger guys.
And how do you take a look at some of these guys that reclassify? Because for me, I typically want to go on the lower end in terms of their expectations rather than the higher end. Like I remember, I believe that it was Bagley Jr. over at Duke. He had himself a relatively nice year. It's actually worked out quite well for a lot of the Duke guys, but schools outside of Duke typically have not had the world's greatest success with it. And I do think that while some of these guys could be a nice role player, like I look at Nesmith going on over to Vanderbilt, certainly I think that improves their depth. I don't think that they're much more than, say, depth pieces, guys that could be able to be like able to come off the bench, give you a solid 10 minutes, 5 fouls, maybe a few points. I just don't think that they're really going to be impact guys right away because they're going against guys that at this point are 6 and 7 years older than them, and they should be going to senior prom this year.
Yeah, exactly, Greg. I think it goes both ways, and I think it can go against you if your body isn't mature enough and physically you're not there. But if you're physically there and able to bang to a certain degree with the older guys in the SEC, the Big Ten, Big 12, ACC, Big East, you take your pick on league, then I think it's another piece because sometimes it is to their benefit that they have less miles on their tires because now that we're getting 23, 24, and 25-year-olds, their bodies are breaking down a little bit quicker than the usual senior when they were 22 years old.
Yep, it is very much noted there, and it's been really interesting to see what's been happening over the last few weeks in college basketball because now we've got a little bit more with Michigan as well. They hire on Mike Martin, who was the assistant over at Brown University. They do lose LJ Kaysen, though, and have you changed your tune a little bit on Michigan over the last few weeks? Because I still do have them in the top 3. I think that's really a big 3 out there in the Big Ten with Michigan, Michigan State, and Illinois, but whereas I had Michigan perhaps as that number 1 team coming into the season, I just can't have them there anymore, especially with the fact that they lost Kaysen here in the last week or so.
I think Michigan will be all right with Mike Boyden at the head front. I thought that he did an okay job at Oklahoma State. He took over a tough situation when they were on probation. Looking back on it, they should not have self-reported because there's no point. You can just sue the NCAA and you'll get your way. So nobody should self-report at this point. I think that they'll be interesting because it is a new coach, but it's also continuity because he was their defensive coordinator during the national championship run.
Yep, and hey, if you do self-report, if you're a bigger school like Duke, Cleveland State will get a 3-year like NCAA tournament back. So that's the way that it always works out there as well. Oklahoma State not quite big enough to be able to get that benefit out. We all know that. And Ryan, it has been a very interesting last few weeks in college basketball, and I do want to open it up with this. Is there a team or two that you're feeling a little bit differently about now that we've seen a lot of guys get more eligibility, now that we're getting a little bit more crystallization with these rosters, and now we're actually going to be getting into foreign tours here in the next few weeks as well?
I'm starting to think that LSU is going to get more guys eligible than we think, with the court rulings being the way that they are. So I would say if Will Wade's able to get super old with some of these guys and these crazy transfers, I think LSU will have an opportunity to be an NCAA tournament team in year number 1.
Well, you can't go into the 2020 draft. Unfortunately, he tried that with Jan Madar. He's going to need to try to go, at the very least, 2021 NBA draft. If you got drafted during the COVID year, you're probably not going to be able to get eligibility. Even the NCAA can win that court ruling. So I guess we have found the line of demarcation there. But what we always know is that you'll deliver the goods, my friend. Ryan, you're doing such a great job looking at all things college sports. You're doing a great job looking at West Virginia and so much more. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Of course, Greg. Appreciate you having me as always. Go check us out over at the College Experience year round. And then my personal handle is Moneyline Mac. And then, all 138 team previews for college football. And then our coaches tour will begin here in a couple weeks for the fall. So looking forward to getting that kicked off. And then we'll do some TBT action as well with some of these former college basketball guys.
The TBT is always a lot of fun. You get just some of these random tomfoolery teams, and you're like, wow, that guy was really good back in the day. I thought that he fell off the face of planet Earth, and there he is. And I think that John Elmore partook in it a few years ago, and we saw him at Summer League this year. It was very strange watching his ball head on the LA Lakers, but hey, I enjoyed it. Ryan, I'm sure, enjoyed it as well, and we always enjoy him being on this podcast. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Like I said, with the conference previews, I've slowed down the last few days with everything that we're seeing in these court cases. I'll probably get them gassed up more towards the middle of the week next week, so be on the lookout there. I'll be with you guys with a fresh podcast every single day because this podcast is now on a streak of over 2,400 straight days without a missed podcast, so we'll be keeping that going, and I'll be back with you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you.